Webster defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time Jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
And folks, I'm glad to be back with my amazing team this year. Once again, as I have told them all spring long, this is truly going to be a landmark season for this company, me as a handicapper, and our future as far as what we're going to be doing going forward. So I have dubbed this season the last dance for a reason, and much credit to our newest team member, Tina, who dubbed us the Assassin's Creed this year. If you're familiar with that video game, that's how we're going to attack this season all year long. So cannot wait to get into these 6 matchups. And I'm going to quote the legendary UCLA um, head basketball coach and John Wooden. We're going to go through these games quickly, but we're not going to be in a hurry. So I got you for the next, let's call it 60 plus minutes here, as I'm going to spend roughly about 8 to 9 minutes on each one of these contests. So let's not waste any time and let's get into our first matchup. And that first matchup will be the Alabama Crimson Tide heading down to Tallahassee, Florida to take on the Florida State Seminoles. Folks, little backstory in this ball game. When Nick Saban, surprisingly to some, when he stepped down at the end of the 2022 season, 23 season, there was wide speculation as far as who would be tabbed the head coach to step in and replace him. I can tell you that there were 2 names on that list, Kalen DeBoer and Florida State head coach Mike Norvell. Now, at the time, Kalen DeBoer was the head coach of the Washington Huskies, who was coming off of a national championship game appearance, and that's who Nick Saban dubbed to be his replacement. Mike Norvell wisely signed an extension there with the Florida State Seminoles, and folks, had the most disappointing season in 5 decades there for Florida State. But we're going to be forward looking here, and we're going to really kind of assess these 2 coaches and then get into some of the team data, if you will. Now, when we look at our head coaching rankings since the start of the 2023 season, Mike Norvell enters this year as our 28th head coach, and he took quite a stumble coming off of that undefeated regular season 2 years ago. That's what happens when you go 2-10. As far as Kalen DeBoer, while a disappointing season to some new Alabama fans, let's just remember what Nick Saban's record was his first year at Alabama. Nick Saban lost 6 games his first year. So 3 losses for Kalen DeBoer. Just missed out on making the college football playoffs. Yes, coming off of a disappointing loss to Oklahoma to really kind of knock them out of contention. But I think Alabama's in good hands with Kalen DeBoer, and we'll see if Mike Norvell can have a bounce back year for Florida State. Now, I'm going to use some of the matchup data from last year when analyzing these 2 teams. So let's start with the Crimson Tide passing game last year, because we know while Jalen Milroe, fantastic, talented athlete, not a quarterback that played in timing and rhythm a lot last year, and that's why you saw a lot of inconsistencies from the Alabama passing game last year. Now, with that being said, Alabama was still the 37th best passing attack in all of college football last year. The Florida State defense, especially in the passing game, was actually not a part of the problem last year, as they were a top 10 unit, coming in at number 8 for us at the end of the regular season last year. This Alabama ground game will look tremendously different this year without the running quarterback in Milroe. Alabama was the 18th best rushing attack in college football last year. Florida State Seminoles rush defense, 103rd there in college football. So take that passing number with a grain of salt for the Seminoles. When you're getting run on to this level, teams don't have to worry about throwing the ball. They'll just ground and pound you into submission, and that's what you saw from quite a few teams last year. Now, let's take a look at the Seminoles passing game. 110th passing attack last year in college football. As far as the Alabama Crimson Tide passing defense, Alabama had the 9th best pass defense for us last season. As far as the ground game goes, Florida State, which I do think this number will be drastically improved with the addition of Tommy Castellano, who I'll talk about here in just a moment, and of course, new offensive coordinator in Gus Malzahn. So I don't expect them to be 114th again this year. That Alabama rush defense was 61st. I also expect them to be much better this year because it's year 2 in Kane Womack's system there, that 4-2-5 that he likes to run. I expect now guys that have a better understanding of their assignments and just an overall comfortable standpoint there for the coaching staff. I expect that number to be improved as well. So I expect both of those units that I just mentioned there in the run game to be much improved. Alabama's new quarterback, one in Ty Simpson, the 4th-year junior, no really starting experiences, has kind of just bided his tongue and just waited it out, kind of like what we saw with some former quarterbacks early on in Nick Saban's tenure. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, a couple of significant injury notes there for the Crimson Tide. Jam Miller out with a collarbone injury. He's going to miss at least the first 3 games. They hope to have him back after the bye week when they head to Athens to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. Expect a heavy dose of Daniel Hill and Richard Young. Young is more of the lightning, if you will, 5'11", 212 pounds. Hill is definitely the thunder, 6'1", 240-pound tailback there. So expect him to get a lot of the goal line and short yardage carries there. Tim Keenan also out with tightrope ankle surgery. The Tide hope to have him back, hopefully for the Georgia game, but if not, a few weeks after that. So once they really get into the heart of conference play. Also out or expected to be out is Jaden Roberts. Got nicked up in the final scrimmage there for the Crimson Tide. Suffered a concussion, so will likely be a game time decision there. No real significant entries there for the Seminoles. Now, let's talk about that transfer quarterback in Tommy Castellano. Won't get into the ridiculous comments that he made, but did provide some bulletin board material there for the Crimson Tide defense. Now, in his 2 years at Boston College, and really only a year and a half because he got benched early on last season there by Billy O'Brien, head coach of Boston College, but also former offensive coordinator for the Crimson Tide. More connections there. He was a below 60% completion percentage quarterback in his year and a half there with Boston College. 31 touchdowns, 19 INTs. Did have 18 passing touchdowns to 5 INTs before he was benched last year. My biggest concern for Florida State is where is the pass rush going to come from? Darrell Jackson Jr., nose tackle, is the leading returning sacker there for the Noles with 3.5 sacks. So will Florida State have to bring the blitz in this ball game? I would expect so. And if they do have to bring the blitz, will they be able to get to Ty Simpson, get him rattled, or will he be able to hit some of those checkdowns by Ryan Grubbs, who is back with Kalen DeBoer after spending last year with the Seattle Seahawks. But these two have long worked together and have an excellent chemistry. So expect this Alabama passing attack to look more like the 2023 Washington Husky team that went to the national title game with Michael Penix and those great wide receivers led by Roma Dunze. Now, speaking of Alabama's passing attack, Ryan Williams, one of the best wide receivers we saw in college football last year. Him, along with Jeremy Bernard, who has multiple years in this offense as he transferred over from Washington last year. These two combined for 98 receptions, over 1,600 yards receiving, and 10 receiving touchdowns. But the guy that I'm going to be keeping my eye on in this ball game is transfer wide receiver from the University of Miami Hurricanes in Isaiah Horton. 56 receptions, 616 yards, 6 receiving touchdowns. I think that he can exceed most of those numbers in this offense, if provided he stays healthy, because all of the attention will be going to Ryan Williams. A lot of the attention will be going to Jeremy Bernard. He's going to see a lot of one-on-one coverage. If he's able to take advantage of those matchups, he should absolutely excel. Now, keys for Florida State in this ball game. It is imperative that they run the ball better, because what was Alabama's bugaboo last year on defense was mobile quarterbacks. Look at the game against Vanderbilt in Diego Pavia as he was able to carve up Alabama running the ball last year. We talked about the Oklahoma Sooners with their dual threat running quarterback putting up tremendous yards on this Alabama defense. So if you wanted to beat Alabama last year, having a mobile quarterback helps. And Tommy Castellano is a very mobile quarterback. He's going to need to beat the Alabama Crimson Tide both with his arm and his legs. So timing as far as when he's throwing the ball, making very good decisions there. Gus Malzahn will try to scheme him up in the ground game, but it's important that Florida State stays ahead of the sticks in this contest against Alabama. If they're able to do so, we could get this game into the fourth quarter as a one-score game potentially. In our second contest, folks, this has been a game that I have absolutely been salivating over for several weeks, and that is the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets taking on Coach Prime. They're under the lights here in just a couple of hours. They're in beautiful Boulder, Colorado. And the Yellow Jackets, let's start with the head coaching matchup. For Georgia Tech, their head coach, Brent Key, comes in as our 56th ranked head coach that is still active there since the start of the 2023 season. As far as Coach Prime, he comes in as our 43rd head coach. So just a slight advantage there for Coach Prime there in this matchup. Now, what do I love about this Georgia Tech team? It's got to be their ability to run the ball. And if you're going to be successful in this matchup, I think it's absolutely imperative that Georgia Tech is able to run the ball in this matchup. You're talking about Haynes King, who is coming off a phenomenal season there for the Yellow Jackets last year. Not only was he successful through the air, but also gave them a little bit on the ground as well. Now, they do lose a talented wide receiver in the transfer portal in one Eric Singleton Jr., as he transfers to the Auburn Tigers. I'll be talking about him in just a moment. But you're looking at a team in Georgia Tech from an offensive standpoint. Let's talk about King's numbers really quickly. 73% completion percentage there, 2,000, a little over 2,100 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, 2 INTs. Now, but the guy that makes this offense go is one Jamal Haynes. 944 rushing yards on 169 attempts, 9 rushing touchdowns, averaging about 73 yards per game. I expect those numbers to probably even be a little bit better as they're going to lean on the ground game. And in this kind of new school option offense, expect a step up in production for wide receiver Malik Rutherford, as Eric Singleton, who is gone, and he's taking 56 receptions, 754 yards, and 3 touchdowns with him to Auburn. Keep those numbers in mind when I get ready to break down the Auburn Tigers here in just a moment. For the Colorado Buffaloes, we know they just lost a unicorn in Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, and of course Shedeur Sanders and some other key starters there for this high-octane passing attack there for the Buffaloes. In from Liberty is Caden Salter, and folks, Caden Salter, 2 years at Liberty, kind of a mixed bag of peanuts, if you will, but he does provide an excellent dual threat opportunity. When I pull up his numbers, Salter, really poor completion percentage, only 56% completion percentage, less than 1,900 yards passing, 15 touchdowns, 6 INTs. So got to do a much better job of taking care of the ball. That's why we could see the phenomenal freshman there in Julian Lewis play quite a bit. And Coach Prime has already kind of indicated we may see that. Now, Salter has a running threat. 579 yards rushing on 114 attempts, 5.1 yards per rushing attempt, 7 rushing touchdowns. He's going to need to absolutely play much more fundamentally sound if Colorado is going to be successful in this ball game later on tonight. Mike, look back at these teams' passing and rushing attacks last year. Let's start with the Yellow Jackets passing game. 45th best passing attack last year, and they're going up against a CU defense that was a top 10 passing defense, coming in at number 7. Now, when we look at the run game, and this is where Georgia Tech is really going to want to get things going, Georgia Tech was 48th in rushing last year, and they're going up against a Colorado rush defense that was 40th. Now, when we flip it over, the Buffaloes just never committed to the run game last year. And I kind of see why when you have that kind of passing attack, but you got to be more balanced. 124th in rushing last year, and this Georgia Tech run defense was 37th. So big time advantage there based on those data points from last year for Georgia Tech's run defense. As far as the passing game, now we expect a much significant drop off just due to the weapons and the trigger man at the quarterback position. But Colorado last year, eighth best passing attack, and they're going up against the Georgia Tech pass defense that was 42nd. So who are my keys to watch in this ball game? And I'm going to start with, for Colorado, I think it's got to be not just a player to watch, but I think Pat Shurmur, the offensive coordinator for the Buffaloes. I want to see what this offense is going to look like this year without Travis Hunter, without Shadur Sanders at quarterback, without some of those familiar names that we got a chance to know last year, can Pat Shurmur and this running game be better than what we saw last year, and just a lack of commitment there? As far as Georgia Tech, most people would go with the quarterback in Haynes King. I'm going to go with the running back in Jamal Haynes. I want to see him used as not only a weapon in the run game, wearing down maybe this Colorado run defense, but also coming out of the backfield as well. So those are my keys to watch. The offensive coordinator for the Buffaloes in Pat Shurmur, and then the running back / offensive weapon there coming out of the backfield in Jamal Haynes. In our next matchup, it will be the Auburn Tigers heading to Waco to face the Baylor Bears. And folks, this is another matchup that I've absolutely been waiting to see since the schedule was really kind of set into place early in the spring. I think this matchup is so important for not only Auburn head coach Hugh Freeze, who is firmly on the hot seat, but also Dave Aranda, who is coming off of a solid year last year, but has absolutely had his struggles there in Waco as well. So a very pivotal game for both of these head coaches. And let's start with the coaching matchup here. So we have Hugh Freeze as our 74th ranked coach there in college football. And for Dave Aranda, we have him as the 60th head coach. So you can see why one head coach is on a warm seat and while one is firmly on a hot seat. Hugh Freeze absolutely needs to get off to a fast start here this season. Now, for Baylor, let's take a look at let's go ahead and just take a look at our player to watch, because I think it's imperative that this young man absolutely has a fantastic game, and that's the quarterback Sawyer Robertson. Last year struggled with his completion percentage, only 62% completion percentage, 3,071 yards, did have 28 passing touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So solid there, but absolutely still room for improvement there. Now, they will be without their talented number 2 running back there in Dawson Pendergrass. Suffered a lower leg injury. He will be lost for the entire season. For the Auburn Tigers, let's get to their offensive matchup, and they bring in a very talented passing game into this contest. We know that they hit the transfer portal. They hit the recruiting portal with Deuce Knight, highly touted high school quarterback. They hit the portal. They bring in from Oklahoma the quarterback in Jackson Arnold, who has to play better than what Peyton Thorne did last year. 63% completion percentage, 2,700 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, but 9 interceptions. That's not good for a freshman quarterback, much less a veteran quarterback. Expect Auburn to try to get better production out of the quarterback position, and they have the talented wide receivers to do so. I talked about Eric Singleton Jr.'s numbers from Georgia Tech just moments ago. Cam Coleman, one of the fantastic young wide receivers there as well, coming off of his freshman campaign. 37 receptions, almost 600 yards receiving, 8 receiving touchdowns, along with Perry Thompson. This trio of wide receivers should help Jackson Arnold behind a veteran offensive line look much better than what we saw there behind that makeshift offensive line for Oklahoma last year. So for Auburn in the passing game last year, ranked 41st 43rd last year, while the Baylor Bears pass defense was ranked 68th. This Auburn Tiger rushing attack was ranked 21st last year. I think that number actually could be improved now with a more mobile quarterback there. I think Auburn could absolutely crack the top 20. And you're looking at Baylor's rush defense, only 68th last year. So some struggles there stopping the run there for Baylor. Now let's flip it over. Baylor's rushing attack last year was 16th. They're going up against an Auburn rushing defense that ranked last year top 7 with a lot of those starters, a lot of those key players back from last year. Kendrick Folk could see his name called in the first round last year. I'm going to give you my player to watch, though, for the Auburn Tigers here in just a moment, because every Batman needs a Robin. Now, as far as Baylor's passing offense last year, ranked 21st last year, they're going up against an Auburn secondary that was ranked 43rd last year. So Auburn's definitely going to need to be a little bit more buttoned up there in the pass defense in this contest. My player to watch for the Auburn Tigers, and like I said, everybody's going to talk about Kendrick Folk, and I understand why. But as I like to look at who's your number 2 pass rusher when you have your alpha dog. So Falk last year, 7 sacks last year, 11 tackles for loss. So who am I going to highlight for the Auburn Tigers in this matchup? It's true sophomore Malik Blockton. Last year, Blockton in spot duty really kind of came on late in the season. Just 16 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, but did have 1.5 sacks. Now, just a little backstory here. Malik Blockton is the younger brother of Marcus Harris, who played there for the Auburn Tigers just a couple of years ago. He was the defensive tackle that got the sack on Jalen Milroe there in the Iron Bowl a couple of years ago, and would have made the play of the game if Auburn wouldn't have had a brain cramp and not rushed Jalen Milroe 4th and 31. Alabama fans call that the gravedigger play. But so why did I highlight Malik Blockton? I just mentioned it. Kendrick Falk is going to get all of the eyeballs there from that Baylor offensive pass protection standpoint. If Malik is able to beat the tackle that he's going to be going up against and just put some pressure on the quarterback, get that ball out just a tick or two sooner, that could force some turnovers there by Sawyer Robertson, who I talked about. His completion percentage could come into play in this ball game. So Malik Blockton, our player to watch in this ball game for the Auburn Tigers. Quarterback Sawyer Robertson, player to watch for the Baylor Bears in this matchup. Folks, we're just halfway home, and we're just rounding second. We got 3 big-time matchups coming up. Let's go ahead and get to the first one. And folks, in the first of our 3 marquee matchups, we're going to call this the trifecta of games of the week. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Hello, good to my good friend Irish Bill. Heads down to Coral Gables. More importantly, Miami Gardens to take on the Miami Hurricanes. Folks, this heated rivalry goes back to the early and mid 1980s when Jimmy Johnson took his 1986 Miami Hurricanes in the South Bend, lost a very heartbreaking loss, controversial, if you will. I think Cleveland Gary did cross the end zone before fumbling, but when you're playing on the road in South Bend, you're not going to get that call. So now Notre Dame heads down to Coral Gables. Like I said, much directly Miami Gardens, and takes on the Miami Hurricanes. Folks, Marcus Freeman has been nothing short of spectacular as the head coach there for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, coming off of a national championship game appearance there for the Irish. looking to kind of maybe get back there again this year. So Marcus Freeman comes in as our 12th ranked head coach in college football, currently active head coaches there. And Mario Cristobal, back at his alma mater, two-time national championship winning offensive tackle there for the Canes back in the late 80s and early 90s there for Miami. Mario comes in as our 26th ranked head coach. So two solid head coaches in this matchup. And let's go ahead and get into the breakdown here, because I think we're going to see a much different offense than what we saw from Miami last year when first overall pick Cam Ward was just lighting up defenses on a consistent basis. The Miami Hurricanes had the number one passing offense in all of college football for us last year. This Notre Dame secondary was absolutely elite, 16th in pass defense last year. Now, where the Canes struggled on offense last year, it has to be in the run game. Miami was only 49th as far as being able to run the ball last year. That number's gotta be improved. And this Notre Dame defense last year was 33rd against the run. And they were missing two of their defensive tackles multiple times during last year. Now, for Notre Dame, CJ Carr steps in as quarterback, so we'll see this new look Notre Dame passing attack that was only ranked 93rd last year because Riley Leonard was more of a running threat than he was a passing threat. They're taking on a Miami pass defense that was 28th at the end of the regular season in our metrics. Now, this Notre Dame rushing attack, absolutely spectacular, led by the best running back in all of America in Jeremiah Love. 5th best rushing attack in all of college football last year. The Miami rush defense, serviceable. They were 49th last year, but big edge there for Notre Dame. In my heart of hearts, I truly believe this matchup, when Notre Dame has the ball, it's going to be that Notre Dame offensive line going up against a very good Miami front seven. Now, big injury note for the Fighting Irish. Offensive guard Charles Jagasaw suffered a broken arm during the offseason in the ATV accident. He's going to miss at least the first half of the season, but their bookend tackles are some of the best in the country, and Anthony Knapp and Amal Wagner, two of the best tackles in all of college football. You got a lot of guys who got a lot of snaps in this offense, on this offensive line last year. And they're going up against a Miami rush defense that has absolutely got to be able to hold up at the middle of the attack there. We know what Ruben Bain Jr. is as a pass rusher, but I'm going to focus on one of the interior defensive tackles. Ahmad Moden Sr., 6'3", 300-pound junior defensive tackle. He is absolutely going to have to fortify the middle, both in the ground game and the passing game. So can he get at least a stalemate against that starting offensive line for Notre Dame? If he can, that's going to bode well for Miami in this matchup. If he can't, that's going to be very problematic in a game where we could see some humidity start to play effect there in the second half. So something to keep an eye on for Miami. the player to watch as far as their offense, it has to be the transfer quarterback in Carson Beck. 2 years ago, phenomenal season. Last year, one of the worst stretches of quarterback play that I saw from any veteran quarterback last year. Now, Miami lost 6 of their top 7 pass catchers from last year. So, in from LSU in C.J. Daniels, JoJo Trader, and Ray Joseph will have to step up and be very big-time producers, but they're going to have to beat man-to-man coverage as Chris Ash, the new defensive coordinator for Notre Dame. Will he still run the same scheme that Al Golden, who's now with the Cincinnati Bengals, ran last year quite well with this secondary? And when you got 2 of the best cornerbacks in all of America in Leonard Moore and Christian Gray, going to be hard to beat one-on-one coverage routinely in this matchup. So can Carson Beck have the trust to hit those wide receivers in timing, in rhythm, going up against man-to-man coverage and not a lot of zone coverage? I want to see how Chris Ash plays this game from a defensive play caller standpoint. I think if he's able to have a successful play calling sheet there, that could bode well for Notre Dame. If not, could be problematic. Now, for Miami, got to get off the field on third downs, and that means selling out to stop the ground game. So my player to watch for Notre Dame is going to be the wide receiver in Jaden Greathouse. Saw him start to come on late in the season last year, despite having a quarterback who would not just put the ball up in the air nearly as much. That's going to be something to look out for in this contest. So I expect a very hard-fought game, but it's really going to come down to the trenches for me in this contest. Whoever is able to get that advantage should come out on top. In our second of 3 marquee matchups this weekend, the LSU Fighting Tigers head to Clemson, South Carolina, to take on the Clemson Tigers. Folks, make no mistake, 2 teams with national championship aspirations. Both teams looking to build on seasons where they came up just a little bit short. But most importantly, star power at the quarterback position. You're talking about 2 young men who could hear their names called very early on in next year's draft when we're coming to you live from beautiful Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik, QB1 and QB2 for us leading into the season, and I expect both of these quarterbacks to have tremendous seasons this year. Let's start with the visiting head coach in this matchup, and Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly comes in as our 21st ranked head coach in college football since the start of the 2023 season. He's taken on 2-time national championship winning head coach in Dabo Swinney. Dabo comes in as our 27th ranked head coach in this matchup. So once again, 2 head coaches that are inside of our top 30 in this matchup. So something that could bear in mind in this matchup. Something else that could bode well in this matchup is the new defensive coordinator for the Clemson Tigers. Coming over from Penn State is Tom Allen. First time Dabo goes outside of the family and brings in an outsider to run the defense there in Tom Allen. Former defensive coordinator there was just over his skis. And bringing in a veteran coordinator like Tom Allen should pay immediate dividends there for the Clemson Tigers. Let's get into the matchups from a data standpoint from last year, and let's start with the visiting LSU Tigers. Folks, LSU's passing game was nothing short of phenomenal week in and week out. Garrett Nussmeier was cooking with hot grease. Over 4,000 yards passing, 29 passing touchdowns. Now, what we want to see is a little bit less of the gambling and risk taking there with those 12 INTs, but I think that Garrett Nussmeier could be on pace to have another fantastic season there for LSU. Now, Clemson's secondary was ranked 39th last year, so solid in the secondary, and that secondary is aided by that phenomenal pass rush there in T.J. Parker and Peter Woods, two of the best players in the front seven at their position. Now, something that we're not accustomed to seeing from LSU, and that's the inability to run the ball. 77th is where we had the Tigers ranked last year from a rushing attack standpoint, and this Clemson rush defense was 58th. So something to keep in mind there. Now, let's take a look at the Clemson running game against this LSU rush defense. Clemson was 24th in the ground game last year using our metrics, and LSU was 39th. Not a position that we're accustomed to seeing from an LSU defense. The Clemson passing game, also electric. Cade Klubnik had this offense absolutely churning and burning as well. 3,600 yards passing, 36 passing touchdowns, but only 6 INTs. So something to keep in mind there. Turnovers could be very costly in this ball game. Now, LSU's pass defense was still solid coming in at 23rd. I know we're used to seeing them a little bit higher, but coming in at 23rd is nothing to be ashamed of there. So, players to watch in this ball game. And I know a lot of people are going to talk about Harold Perkins moving back to the star position. Basically, he is the third safety on the field. He's going to play down in the box. He's going to have the ability to flip sides of the field based on matchups and things of that nature. But the player for me to watch, and really it's going to be two players, Dominic McKinley and Jacobian Gilroy. Those are the two starting defensive tackles for LSU. If they aren't able to control the line of scrimmage, we could absolutely see this LSU rush defense still struggling. So something to bear in mind in this matchup. For Clemson, you're talking about phenomenal wide receivers all over the yard in Antonio Williams, in TJ Moore, in Brian Wesco Jr. But for me, the player to watch in this matchup will be cornerback Avion Terrell, younger brother of A.J. Terrell, star cornerback for the Atlanta Falcons. Has a tendency to get a little bit handsy, draws some holding penalties, some pass interference penalties. So it's going to be very important for him to play a very clean sheet, if you will, borrowing the term from soccer there, as far as being able to play very fundamentally sound defense there against this LSU passing attack. Because, folks, make no mistake, LSU is not devoid of talent at the wide receiver spot. Aaron Anderson, Chris Hilton Jr., Xavier Thomas. Folks, these wide receivers were all highly touted coming out of high school. So LSU, another one of those schools where talent is not going to be an issue, especially at the wide receiver spot. I think it's going to be imperative for Avion Terrell to play very solid there at the cornerback position, and that ball coming out a tick sooner with T.J. Parker, with Del Monte Carbhart, Peter Woods will help that defensive front four. If they're able to control the front, this makeshift LSU starting offensive lineman, breaking in 4 new starters, including losing top 5 pick in Will Campbell. That's going to be very problematic for Garrett Nussmeier because Nuss is not going to give you anything as far as breaking the pocket goes. And now if Clemson is able to rush 4 and drop 7 in the coverage, those windows are going to be extremely tight for Garrett Nussmeier. So it's not the yards that I'm going to look at for Garrett Nussmeier in this matchup. It's all going to be about the completion percentage. It's all going to be about keeping this offense on rhythm. And it's going to start with LSU being able to run the ball. So my player to watch for LSU on offense, Caden Durham, running back for LSU. He and the rest of these running backs for LSU are going to have to serve notice that they can absolutely find some success against this Clemson defense in this matchup. Folks, we got 5 games down. We got 1 more matchup to go. Summer, hit me a little headbanger music. Folks, it's the marquee matchup of the season, and we're getting it in week 1. And folks, let me just say this at the top here. The loser of this game is nowhere close to being out of the national championship picture. This game is too early in the season, and we still have 11 more games to go out. So the loser is nowhere near out of the race. But for the winner, a lot of momentum and a lot of early season positivity will come from this ball game. Folks, both of these rosters are extremely talented, and I expect a lot of that talent to be fully on display in this matchup. Let's start with some of the names that you know, and then let's get to some of the names that you need to know. First of all, head coaches. Both of these head coaches are firmly within our top 10. Steve Sarkisian comes in as our 5th ranked head coach since the start of the 2023 season. Ryan Day, fresh off of that national championship, comes in at number 7. Both of these head coaches are top 10 head coaches, and I firmly expect at the end of the year, both of those head coaches still to be ranked inside of the top 10. Both have done a phenomenal job there at their respective stops. I do not see anything changing this year. The names that you know. Let's start with the visiting Longhorns, making his first significant start in Arch Manning. Hugh Wozner back at the running back position there for the Texas Longhorns. On the defensive side, one of the best edge rushers in all of America in Colin Simmons. One of the best off-ball linebackers in America in Anthony Hill Jr. One of the best cornerbacks in America in Malik Muhammad. And one of the best safeties in America in Michael Taft. For the Ohio State Buckeyes, Jeremiah Smith. True that. That's all I got to tell you. Carnell Tate getting his spot as the number 2 wide receiver for the Buckeyes. Folks, Carnell Tate was never an issue with his talent. It was just all about opportunity. With Emeka Egbuka off to the NFL, Carnell Tate now has the opportunity to be wide receiver 2 for Ohio State. And to my good friend Amber, who loves her Buckeyes, a name to watch, Max Clare. Transfer from Purdue University could be a matchup nightmare for your Buckeyes there from the tight end spot. Folks, the last time the Buckeyes had a tight end to be drafted in the first round, you got to go back to 1996, I believe, and Ricky Dudley. So Max Clare could break that streak there. He's just that good. On the defensive side of the ball, folks, everybody knows Caleb Downs. Through that again for Caleb Downs. Folks, phenomenal freshman year as a freshman at Alabama, transfers to Ohio State last year, helps the Buckeyes to a national title. D.I., as I like to call him at the cornerback spot, a very good cornerback. Also like Avion Terrell, needs to learn to play without his hands. Trust your technique, young man, and trust your recovery speed, and don't pick up some of those cheap pass interference penalties. But the player that I want you all to get to know, and this young man really stood out to me during the playoff run for the Buckeyes, and that is Smooth Sonny Styles. You know, when I give a player a nickname, he is absolutely something to watch. And Smooth Sonny Styles at the linebacker spot is absolutely phenomenal. So really love how that young man played in the playoffs. Want to see him do that for the entire rest of this upcoming season. Now, some names that you need to know for the Longhorns. Ryan Wingo at the wide receiver spot, 6'2", 215 pounds, taking over from Matthew Golden, who was drafted in the first round by the Green Bay Packers. He will be wide receiver 1 for the Longhorns. Expect that young man to put up phenomenal numbers. Another player to watch for the Longhorns, I'm going to give you Emmett Mosley the fifth, 6'2", 205 pound wide receiver there. I think that this young man also could be a big time matchup there in this ball game. Folks, star power all over the field. Let's get to the coaching matchup, because one team has consistency with their offense and defensive coordinator. One team does not. Texas, their play caller is Steve Sarkisian, but his chief constable, if you will, in Kyle Flood, has been with him since their days at Alabama when they were on staff together. Pete Kowalski, back as the defensive coordinator. I talked about how phenomenal that Texas defense was last year under Pete. I expect them to be that again this year. Now, for the Buckeyes, new offensive coordinator in Brian Hartline, who has done a phenomenal job, as good as anybody I've ever seen developing a position there with a university. Those wide receivers that he has helped develop there in Columbus is literally a who's who in the NFL. But Brian really got his opportunity 2 years ago to be the offensive coordinator. That didn't go well the first time around. Ryan Day had to step in, take over play calling duties. We'll see what he learned from the departing offensive coordinator in Chip Kelly there, who is now with the Las Vegas Raiders. At the defensive coordinator position will be Matt Patricia, longtime defensive coordinator at the NFL level. First time at the college coordinator spot there for the Buckeyes. Matt Patricia, very smart as far as being able to scheme up defenses. We'll see if he's able to bring some of that defensive knowledge there from the New England Patriots there under head coach Bill Belichick for all of those years. If he can bring some of that same scheme and play calling ability there with the Buckeyes. Again, he's got a lot of talent to work with. Bo Atkinson, speaking of University of North Carolina, transferred from the University of North Carolina, 6'6", 265 pound senior. He's looking to take over the production there vacated by JTT and Jack Sawyer. So I'm not expecting him to put up tremendous production numbers, but if he can just help stabilize that defensive line, along with Kenyatta Jackson Jr., who will be the opposite starting defensive tackle, because Ohio State is replacing all 4 starters from that defensive line position there. So it's not a question of talent with the Buckeyes. It's going to be a question of early play experience, and that's going to be tested in this ball game. Now, something that will bear mind for the Longhorns in this matchup, they are replacing 4 out of 5 starters on their offensive line, including top 15 pick in Kevin Banks going to the New Orleans Saints. Banksy was absolutely a mauler there for Texas at the left tackle spot. So again, you're replacing them with talent. Can you replace the experience and just the play recall there for some of those players? Another player to watch for the Texas Longhorns is Ethan Burke. He's going to be playing opposite of Colin Simmons. Like I said, every Batman needs a Robin. And in this matchup, need to see Ethan Burke be able to put some pressure on first-time starting quarterback Julian Sayin. Had to fight off Lincoln for the starting spot there for the Buckeyes. And this 6'1", 200-pound sophomore really getting his first playing experience in college football, going up against that Texas Longhorn defense will be a challenge, especially when he's doing it with three of his starting offensive linemen from last year's team off to the NFL in Simmons, Donovan Jackson, and Seth McLaughlin there for the Buckeyes. So what I'm looking for in this matchup is who's going to play big in big moments. Like I said, both quarterbacks extremely inexperienced in these matchups. Now, both quarterbacks have been in the system. Arch for Texas has been in the system for 2 years now. Julian Sayin was there with the Buckeyes all of last year, so not unfamiliar with the program and some of the weapons he's going to be throwing. They're going to be throwing to. But for me, it always comes down to matchups. And in this matchup, let's start with the keys for the Texas Longhorns. Now, we got a chance to see these two teams match up last year in college football semifinals, and we're going to take some of the notes from that game and apply them to this matchup. So, Will Howard, quarterback for the Buckeyes last year, in that contest, 24 for 33 attempts, 289 yards, 8.8 yards per passing attempt. I like that. One passing touchdown, one INT. The run game for the Buckeyes, non-existent. 24 rushing attempts, 81 yards, 3.4 yards per rushing attempt. Texas did something that no other team in college football could do, and that was shut down Jeremiah Smith. One reception, 3 yards in that contest. Emeka Egbuka, their number 2, 5 receptions, 51 yards. But it was Carnell Tate, who at the time was wide receiver 3, that really kind of did some damage. 7 receptions for 87 yards. Now, the big play I'll talk about here in just a moment. For Texas in that contest, quarterback Quinn Ewers, okay, just not great. 23 completions on 39 attempts, 239 yards, 7.3 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT. Texas run game, also non-existent. 29 rushing attempts, 58 yards, just 2 yards per rushing attempt. Interesting note, Texas's running backs had a combined 11 receptions in that ball game for almost 100 yards. So what were my takeaways in that ball game where, like I said, Ohio State won that contest 28-14, score a little bit misleading. Two plays really changed the outcome of that game. At the end of the first half, in a meaningless check down to Travion Henderson, Texas plays the defense absolutely wrong, does not contain, and gives up a 75-yard touchdown at the end of the first half to put Ohio State up there going into the half. And then with the score being 28-14, very late in the fourth quarter, Quinn Ewers stripped, Captain Jack Sawyer scoops, goes up the sideline for a scoop and score to close out the ball game, close out Texas, and sends Ohio State onto the national championship game. Those two plays cost Texas 14 points. That was the margin of victory there in that ball game. Now, some takeaways. Neither team could run the ball in that matchup last year. I expect that to be the case again this year. Both teams against really elite defenses struggled on third downs. Would not be surprised if we see that again this year. And like I said, The 2 Longhorn mistakes led directly to 14 points, and that's why Ohio State has that national championship in their trophy case and not the University of Texas. So, keys in this matchup. Which team can establish any semblance of a ground game? I expect Arch Manning to use his legs quite a bit in this ball game, whether it's design run plays or breaking contain. I think Arch, who is a much better mobile quarterback than Quinn Ewers was, to use his legs in this ball game. For Ohio State, Julian Sand gets the benefit of playing at home. He's going to need to kind of follow some of what we saw from Will Howard last year. Use your tight end and use your running backs out of the backfield in this contest. You know, all the attention is going to be on Jeremiah Smith. All the other attention is going to go to Carnell Tate. Your tight end, Max Clare, needs to be a very focal point in this matchup. My next key, the experience at the coordinator position. Steve Sarkisian, like I said, head coach, but also the play caller, going up against Matt Patricia. Who has the advantage in that matchup? And then Brian Hartline, offensive coordinator for the Buckeyes, going up against Pete Kowalski, who has been building elite defenses and has faced this Buckeye defense just about 8 months ago. Who has the advantage in that matchup? Whichever coordinators can win their matchups will be very key in this matchup. And when I'm looking at star power all over the place, I'm looking for which special teams will come up big. And I mean all of your special teams. Field goal kickers making their extra points, making their makeable field goal attempts. So anything out inside of 40 yards, that's something I'm looking at. Your kick return yards allowed, your punt return yardage allowed. All of that's going to go into your special teams. Whichever team is able to make the bigger plays in all of those special teams will have a very big advantage in what should be a very hard-fought contest. And then finally, who rises to the occasion in this matchup? Who comes up absolutely money and makes that big-time catch, that big-time run, that big-time throw? Whichever one of these young quarterbacks can step up and make the right decision at the right time, that team will absolutely have success in this matchup. You put it all together, I think that we're in store for one of the best games in this opening weekend. Whoever wins those 3 keys will come out on top and likely be our number 1 ranked team when we go into week 2 next week. Folks, marquee matchups all over the place this year. Landmark season here for the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. Want to say thank you for listening, and we are looking forward to this upcoming season. If you haven't done so, please check out our website at crunchtimesportsadvantage.com. Still have time to pick up one of those fantastic packages that is for you in the betting world, or just want that inside information that we are really good at providing. You can always listen to any of our podcasts on iTunes, Google Play, Podcaster, Spotify. There's also always going to be a link on our website as well. Also give us a follow at Crunch Time VIP on Twitter. Folks, we're going to be posting our records at the end of the week. Now, this week, because it's Monday, we'll have that delay, but all of our plays after the games have been settled will be available on our website and on our Twitter handle for you to track and follow each week. Transparency is big in this business, also maintaining credibility. So on behalf of my fantastic team, Tina, Jessica, Summer, Billy, this is Kenneth, founder and senior analyst for the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. Folks, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you back here next week for week 2 of the college football big show.
Thank you for tuning into the big show. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and our deep dive into the college football playoffs. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at CrunchTimeVIP for updates, insights, and more of our content. And make sure to visit our website at crunchtimesportsadvantage.com for in-depth blogs, game previews, and information about our Crunch Time Express handicapping packages. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Big Show.